Paul, you had the enviable task of reading the entire
well, hold it up
decision.
For us first.
Yeah, there you go. You managed to. Wonderful.
There's a few of them. Do you printed out every page of it so far?
Yeah. From what you've been able to glean, tell us what is in there and what do we need to know?
Well, I think we see the predictable end result of Justice Kennedy's years-long journey using the Constitution's due process and equal protection clauses to extend the right to marry to same-sex couples the same as heterosexual couples. And you see a fairly predictable pushback from the four more conservative members of the court saying that it's fine with us if legislatures want to extend this right to same-sex couples, but this is not the judiciary's work to do. And Chief Justice Roberts, in the main dissent, even went so far as to say, look, if you're in favor of gay marriage, terrific, celebrate today. In a very expansive sense, he said it's a wonderful day for you, but don't celebrate the Constitution, because the Constitution should not have accomplished this. This was a task for democracy to accomplish, for lawmakers.
Well, speaking of lawmakers, let's bring up what President Obama has tweeted now following the Supreme Court decision. He tweeted out shortly, today is a big step in our march toward equality. Gay and lesbian couples now have the right to marry just like anyone else. Hashtag love wins. Again, this is from the @POTUS handle that the president just got, what, earlier this year?
Yes, and so this is another win for the president.
And he follows Hillary Clinton, who, of course, tweeted out her support right away. Paul, as you go through the actual decision, were you surprised by anything that you've seen so far? Was there any mention that you had not expected within the writing?
You know, I'm not trying to boast here, but no, I wasn't terribly surprised. I think this is the logical outcome of a movement in the federal judiciary, capped off by the Supreme Court, that's been underway for some years. The speed of that movement is doubtless surprising. In only a decade, we've gone from a consensus that gay marriage, as upheld by the Constitution, is sort of a fantasy to it being a hard reality. So that is surprising if you go back 10 years. But in terms of the last few years, no, the United States Supreme Court put us on this path several years ago, and now we've reached the logical destination.
I wanted to get your thoughts on the power of popular opinion and how that influences, obviously, the Supreme Court in this particular case, but just generally speaking, the fact that public opinion now is so strong on a variety of issues and that message can be delivered quickly, instantly, and consistently. Does that have an effect on the decision-making process?
I think it does in some instances, and I think gay marriage is one of those instances. As recently as just a few weeks ago, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg at some type of public symposium was commenting on this phenomenon when she was asked, why did attitudes toward homosexuality and in particular gay marriage change so quickly? And she said, because it was a very short period of time when people all across society realized, I know gay people, they're my neighbors, they're my children, and their aspiration to marry does not seem remarkable to me. It seems like the most ordinary, in a sense, almost a conservative impulse to formalize relationships into marriage. And I think that process of the popular consensus forming has affected the United States Supreme Court, and I think that helps explain the speed that we've seen the court turn around on this issue over the last decade.
You know what? I want to bring back Phil Mattingly into this conversation because, Phil, as Jeff was telling us earlier, companies have really been leading the way here. The Supreme Court has now played, you could argue, some catch-up to public opinion here. Within the GOP presidential candidates, they are struggling to define themselves on this issue and very much looking forward to put themselves past it. Having said all that, who within the GOP is not necessarily most embracing but least resistant to same-sex marriage?
I think you have to be careful with this because their public statements matter, and their public statements are universal across the field that they are opposed to same-sex marriage. I think there's a lot of behind-the-scenes thought about one campaign that might be more open to it than others, but I think publicly everybody is more or less in the same place. The difference will be who is willing to actively go out and try and challenge this. We just got a statement from Bobby Jindal that is very strong in its opposition, saying that this is an assault on religious liberty. That's along the lines I think you're going to see from Ted Cruz as well. People you won't see that from, I think, just in general, that tone, are people like Jeb Bush, maybe some of the other top-tier candidates, Chris Christie, folks like that. I think, Scarlett, what's most interesting, and this was just pointed out, business's role in this matters to the Republican Party. Business's role in some of the anti-discrimination laws, when you talk about on the state level in Indiana, in Louisiana, business was just as effective a piece of this coalition on same-sex marriage as anybody else. They have played a huge role, along with groups like the Human Rights Campaign, people like that, who in actually making this happen. Business, obviously, their natural alliance generally is with the Republican Party. This is an issue that they absolutely break on. If you look at businesses who filed supportive briefs to this case, there are a lot of them. But I think also importantly, Scarlett, if you look at, there was a large group of top Republican operatives that also filed in support of same-sex marriage during this process. So it's not the party on the whole, Scarlett, but at this moment, at least in this time, for the 13 declared Republican candidates and the 3 that are likely to get in over the next 2 or 3 months, the calculation is that it's not worth getting out in front of where their primary voters are.
Well done. All right, I want to thank you very much, Phil Mattingly. All right, we're going to Paul, in that sense, you've been highlighting a lot of the opinion. I'm wondering, is it also a little bit of a reflection of the power of Justice Kennedy in swinging a vote one way or the other? I mean, has he become that pivotal vote?
Justice Kennedy has been that pivotal vote on a number of issues for a number of years. Sometimes he tends to tilt the 5-4 decision in the conservative direction. That's been the case, for example, on the First Amendment when it encounters regulations such as campaign finance. In many cases related to racial relations, affirmative action, and so forth, he's been firmly on the conservative side. But in connection with individual liberty, particularly the intimate relations and marriage, he has been consistently now a thought leader on the Supreme Court in shaping the idea of why the court must clear the way for gay marriage. And some of his language here is as high-flying and almost poetic as you're going to find in a Supreme Court decision.